Hello everybody and welcome to 12.19 preview part 1. To remind everybody of how these videos go, in part 1 that is when Riot doesn't actually list what specific buffs and nerfs are happening, but rather they just list what is being buffed and nerfed. This is good to help you understand what's happening. Part 2 will come out tomorrow. That's when they're actually listing what specific changes are going to happen to the champions and items and stuff like that. In part 1 we're going to be discussing why a champion is being buffed or nerfed. In part 2 we'll discuss the actual change itself. Now there's part 3. Part 3 is when I actually do the patch notes. That'll go out in a week. Remember, these changes don't go out for a week. In the actual patch notes themselves, I will go over the actual changes going live. Reminder, none of the actual changes are live until they are in Riot's patch notes. This is important because I've been getting a lot of comments and stuff on the Nasus changes. The Nasus changes didn't go live in the last patch. So a lot of people were asking me, are you going to do a video on Nasus? Are you going to talk about Nasus? Is Nasus good now? Well, unfortunately, because so few of you decided to actually look at my patch notes video thinking you already knew it was going live, a lot of you guys didn't know the Nasus buffs were actually cut out and pushed back for a patch, okay? Now, reminder, I also want to put one last thing after that. Anything on the PBE is not guaranteed to go live, and until they're in Riot's patch preview, and until they're actually in their patch notes and live in the game, they're not guaranteed to happen. Some of the less ethical and less scrupulous people have been taking the PBE notes. Now, the PBE is a public testing environment, effectively, so they put changes there often that they have actually no intention of going live with. A lot of people will tweet out and make videos about those changes, and they go, oh my god, this change is happening. They phrase it and they talk about it as if it's already in the game. Often it won't go in the game and it will be changed. So don't trust those people. They do it for attention, and that's why I only go over the patch previews, and that's why I only go over the patch notes. I don't do speculative videos because they're wrong. Effectively, they're just data mining, and then they're going based on our data mining. It's just speculative, stupid videos, okay? So without further ado, let's go through here. Riot is finally nerfing Eclipse. That's because Eclipse is making a lot of champions overpowered, like Aatrox. It's being hard forced on like half the goddamn roster right now. And despite all the complaints about Blight of the Ruined King, Eclipse is actually the item that is being rushed and forced in like 90% of situations. Not Blight of the Ruined King. I'm not saying Blight of the Ruined King is balanced, or I'm not saying that it's imbalanced. I'm just saying what everyone keeps memeing about Blight of the Ruined King is actually true about Eclipse. Eclipse is just a stupid dominant item right now that I hate because it's stupid and dominant. I want to go through these. I want to go through the actual tweet itself though here real quick. A few changes to off-meta builds as well as some changes to various languishing champions. Mostly not trying to overhaul the practice environment. That's for Worlds. The practice environment is for Worlds because the Worlds patch was last patch, but this patch will be live. So the Worlds players will have to play solo queue on this patch, but then go and play Worlds on last patch. Yeah. But addressing a few clearly weak champions and some that are outliers. Okay, so Eclipse, I'm going over it first because it's clearly broken. Now, what are they going to nerf on Eclipse? I don't know. They never should have buffed it in the first place. They did buff it. It's been upsetting the meta ever since. Hopefully, Riot goes back and nerfs it pretty hard because I'm tired of Eclipse being hard forced on half the meta. It's really getting old. Champion buffs. Fizz. Fizz right now does very low base damage. In fact, let me bring this up to you because some of you guys don't actually understand. Fizz's base damage is horrible. It's absolutely horrible. His base damage on his Q is 10. He gets 10 bonus damage. It is a 0.55 AP ratio and it will proc Lichbane, but just to jump into an enemy, let's say at level 1, it does 10 bonus damage. That's nothing. His Seastone Trident does 50 bonus magic damage and 20 over time. That is pretty goddamn low. This is low. He also then gets 10 on hit for the next 5 seconds. This is really low numbers. His E, his Mega Troll Pull, does 70 damage at rank 1. Suffice it to say, I can guarantee with very high certainty, I guarantee they're going to be buffing Fizz's base damage. Because while late game he can start one-shotting people, early game he's so goddamn pathetic, such a useless sack of fish shit, that actually he's basically unplayable right now. I would hate to have a Fizz on my team because I would rather just have an Echo or a champion who can assassinate people early game and late game, not just late game. They're buffing Mortal Reminder, which I think is actually a terrible decision from Riot. I think when they buff Mortal Reminder, it's just going to end up exactly like Eclipse's, and I think that's going to be a horrible mistake. Here's the problem. Eclipse was getting forced on everyone, as is, you guessed it, Mortal Reminder. Now, it's not being forced on everyone, but as you can see here, here's Garen, and here's his item stats. We can see that Mortal Reminder is being used as a stat stick on a lot of champions. It is just being used purely for its raw stats because its stats are pretty damn high. Now you can say that's unfair for ADC players, but the issue is we see Mortal Reminder get used on Yone, on Yasuo, on Garen, on a lot of champions just to get these stats, just for champions who want raw stats. Now, maybe it needs a rework, maybe it needs to function differently, but until they address the raw stat issue, I do not believe they should be buffing Mortal Reminder. Now, Udyr top is being buffed. Udyr top is trash right now. I actually just made a video a few days ago on that. Udyr top right now is absolute ungodly trash. It's a 46% win rate. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible, unplayable dog shit. I've been getting free wins into it. People are basically trolling with this champion. He's really bad in top lane right now, so he deserves that buff 100%. Ryze is being buffed. I haven't even seen Ryze in a very long time. I'm curious what his actual pick rate is right now. I'm gonna go check that. Just to let's go Masters Plus to see if the high ranking people are even trying to play Ryze. No, he's quite bad and unplayable right now. I'm not sure what to say about Ryze. Every time they buff him, he becomes overpowered, and then every time they nerf him, he becomes useless. I hope that they do something to Ryze that maybe address the fact that his ultimate is really slanted towards teamwork and really slanted away from solo queue. Something like that, I don't know. I think Ryze is really bad to buff right now. I think he's going to be bad to buff basically forever. I don't think Riot should ever buff Ryze until they address his issues, because he's just gonna be like Gwen. He's just gonna end up getting nerfed right afterwards, right? Like, you buff Ryze, oh, and now we have to nerf Ryze. Like, what good was done by that? Was anything improved in the game? Like, oh, we buffed him, then we nerfed him again after he was overpowered for a few patches, whatever. Echo's being buffed again. Much like Fizz, Echo lacks some base damage. He's got a good 100 if he hits both of his Qs, but that's kind of eh. 260 on his base Q, eh. 30 to 140 on his passive, eh. The base damage on his W is 3% missing health damage, below 30%, eh. His E is 50, eh. His ult is 150, eh. Echo's base damages are low. What Echo does have, though, is extraordinarily high AP ratios. 1.5 on his ult, a 0.4 on phase drive, although that's not amazing when you add up that one with the 0.9 on his Q, with the 0.8 on his passive. These all add up. There's also a pretty good AP ratio on his execute. So he's got good AP ratios, but his base damage is terrible. Now, I don't think Echo is actually really that underpowered. I see Echo actually do quite well in the jungle all the time. So I'm kind of hoping they don't really buff Echo, or if they do, they nerf his jungling. I agree Echo mid is a bit weak right now, but the thing is Echo jungle is kind of doing fine. So I kind of hope they don't really buff him, because he does turn into a late game one-shot machine, and Echo jungle can avoid the weak laning phase by just going into the jungle and then hiding in the jungle. So I kind of hope they don't really buff his late game, because his early game gets hidden in the jungle. So if they buff his late game, he goes in the jungle, uses the good late game. You know what I mean? Jinx is being buffed because Riot is buffing every AD carry every patch. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what's really going on with that. It's just every AD carry is getting buffed every patch. Every patch we're seeing more and more AD carries buffed. I don't really think AD carries are doing too bad right now, but they just keep bringing them up and bringing them up and bringing them up. Like, you know what I mean? It's like every patch, more AD carries are being shot up. And then we have a Sona buff. I don't have any opinion on Sona. I thought she was fine. I don't really see any reason to buff Sona. I'm gonna be dead honest. Nasus is getting buffed. They're probably doing the buff they cut off for last time. I'm hoping they don't. I'm really hoping they don't buff Nasus, because I really don't want the Nasus buffs to actually go live. I really don't want them to, man. Various off-meta builds. Again, while some people are farming the PBE for information, and they're like, oh, let's go check what's on the PBE. Let's see what's on the PBE. We need to, you know, I'm not going to do that because until Ryze actually says what's happening, this is all speculative. We don't know what's happening. We don't know what numbers are happening. We don't know what changes are happening. We don't know what's experimental. We don't know what's actually serious. So there's no point speculating. Look, come back tomorrow. Okay, I'll put up another video tomorrow. Come back tomorrow and we'll go over the changes with the actual change log, not just PBE speculation. Master Yi and Ryze are getting nerfed. I can explain this one really easily. Master Yi is overpowered at every rank right now. The last, here's Ryze, by the way. Ryze has been overpowered for like half a year. Ryze is just like disgusting right now. If you're playing a melee champion, she just runs up to you, blue smites, and you're like, I guess I'm dead. It's just that easy. But you can see Master Yi at 51%. That's Masters Plus. At Diamond 2, 51.9%. So that's not even a low 51%. That's a high 51%. At Diamond Plus, he's 51.99%. At Platinum Plus, he's at 52.62%. At all ranks, he's at 52.62%. He's overpowered at every single rank, much like Bel'Veth, who they should also be nerfing. But yeah, so they're gonna nerf Master Yi. I'm sorry. They're gonna have Master Yi and Ryze for being very overpowered. Syndra's being adjusted, but once again, this is PBE speculation. Come back tomorrow and we'll have what Ryze is actually doing. Are they doing what's on the PBE? Are they going a different route? We don't know. So just come back tomorrow and we'll do a longer video going over the changes. So this is the patch 12.19 part 1. I think I went about as in-depth in this as I could. It's not a long video. I think I actually did this in record time, right? Like, I think I actually talked about all these changes. I didn't languish. I didn't dilly-dally. I did all these pretty good. So despite this being a shorter video, I feel like this is actually a pretty complete list, and I'm pretty happy with this. So, yeah, come back tomorrow. We'll talk about the actual changes. As always, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to leave a comment down below. And as always, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye, everybody.